Hey, my name is Alex, and recently I was set the daunting task of creating an album's worth of drums in the style of legendary drummer and pioneer Jojo Mayer. Jojo's been a huge influence on me in my own playing and development, and as well as an incredible career as a drum educator and solo performer, he also plays as part of the electronic band Nerve. So here's a little bit of Jojo's playing for context. Yeah, wish me luck. Jojo is expressive, he's fast, he's dynamic, he's precise, he plays a number of genres. All the things you would expect from a top drummer in the modern world, where top drummers can do most anything. So my longtime collaborator and kind of experimental musical madman, Folmr, check him out. He's a huge Nerve fan, and we decided to try something different for our next album. We've collaborated many times, but for this one we thought, what if I wrote 7 drum tracks in the style of Jojo and Nerve, and we built the album around those tracks. So mission accepted, of course. This is a big challenge and something exciting to kind of sink my teeth into. It's a multidisciplinary challenge, and it's going to work like this. Because I work digitally, I figured the first step would be to try and replicate Jojo's sound. So I used the following videos as references, and if you haven't already watched these, you definitely should, because it gives an incredible kind of idea of Jojo's versatility, his range, and his drum solos are just incredible to listen to if you like drumming. So I used Superior Drummer 3, with whom I'm not affiliated, I just like the product. And I started piecing together drum kits that would come close to his sound. So I created a process for selection, which you can see here. It consists of 5 rules to ensure that I captured the full range of Jojo's drum sounds throughout his career, with the most accuracy possible. So check out some of Jojo's kits compared directly with the stuff I made, and then I'll explain how it all works. So fundamentally, I took audio recordings from several of my favorite Nerve tracks and Jojo solos, and then I did my best to duplicate not only the sound of the drums themselves, but also the production, the room ambience, and any effects that were on the source audio. I did this by layering samples taking multiple snare sounds, putting them together, adjusting many parameters, and did the same for the toms, the cymbals. So all of these kits are made in Superior Drummer 3, but they are custom made by me. So the next thing I did was to pick a bunch of Nerve tracks that I felt encapsulated Jojo's many flavors of drumming. If we're going to have 7 tracks on the album, I want each one to have not only a different Jojo drum kit, but a different Jojo feel. So he has obviously signature kind of jungle and drum and bass beats that he's known for, but he also plays odd time signatures, heavily syncopated beats where the snare drum moves around, house inspired dance grooves, and also kind of super minimal driving loops. So it's a range from extremely technical, busy and fast, all the way down to just minimal and ambient almost. From there I had to face the really big challenge, which is how the hell do I play like Jojo? So I'm a big fan of his Secret Weapons for the Modern Drummer series of videos, which you should definitely seek out. And I've carefully developed many of the same kind of techniques that he uses. And so it was more a question of composition and intention rather than raw physical ability. Now, this is not to say that I can play the same as Jojo or as well as Jojo. Jojo is on another level. He's virtuoso. So it's difficult to play like Jojo. It's difficult to even think like Jojo. But there are certain elements at play here where you can either do it or you can't. For example, you can either use a push-pull at 200 BPM or you can't. You've trained it or you haven't. That's why we train all techniques to a good degree of competence. But I'll be talking more about that in future videos. So here are some of the techniques that Jojo uses and that I am trying to include in my own playing on this album. So I spent a few days on the kit analyzing and playing and uncovering some of the main ideas that Jojo uses. These are kind of signature phrases that he has throughout his playing. So here's one sticking pattern that Jojo uses all the time in his jungle drumming. Starts with a triple stroke on the ride. And what we call a pull-out accent on the snare, which is where you accent the second hit of 2, where you do a kind of whipping motion to accent that second hit. So then we combine them, the triple stroke on the ride with the pull-out accent on the snare. And when you combine those two things together, you get a lot of mileage to use in your chops. So we stir these two elements together with breakbeat principles, which is where we chop up a groove and reassemble it in different ways. And you kind of get the crux of what Jojo's doing when he's playing jungle drums, in my opinion. Jojo also does a lot of metric modulation type of stuff, and we can see that in the track Black Tip Reef Shark. It's a lot of kind of polyrhythms and changing the feel of time without changing time itself. I know that sounds insane, but it's a really cool thing where you can reinterpret a standard beat in 4/4 or in 6/8 with triplets, moving the backbeat around, all that kind of stuff. So one of the tracks is very much inspired by that. Jojo's also a seriously groovy drummer, and he's constantly filling out his grooves with ghost notes and little details that make the drums feel dense and kind of ever-changing, but without trying to steal attention away from the music, which is a really fine balance to strike. So replicating that feel means having just a ton of highly conditioned coordination and muscle memory to draw from. Similarly to what I said earlier with the push-pull, you can either do it at that tempo or you can't. You've either practiced that or you haven't. And the same goes for nuance and ghost notes inside grooves. You have to spend time locking down a number of kind of variables that allow you to do that in the moment spontaneously. Speaking of which, I also had one parameter which I typically apply to all of my recording and my YouTube drumming, which is that everything must be played spontaneously with no planning. I don't do charts or phrasing or rehearsals really of any kind, because the whole point in my philosophical approach to drumming is that music is kind of self-expression and conversations happen in real time. So I know it sounds kind of pretentious, but the idea is to sit on the drums and whatever comes out, comes out. I might have a few preconceptions, for example, about the genre, and there'll be a tempo set for, most of the time, and then just see what happens. So I took time to practice in the style of Jojo to try and get some of his principles and fundamentals buried in my own playing, but then I hit record and it was basically just go time. And so here are some snippets of what I ended up with. Track 1 is jungle drums in the style of tetrastigm from the album The Distance Between 0 and 1. Track 2 is a 6/8 track inspired by To Listen Is To Love from the album Nerve. Track 3 is a house track that uses 2 layers of drums, and it's in the style of Hafiz from Ghost of Tomorrow and Flood from the album Nerve. Track 4 is a 7/8 track inspired by 7 Even from the album Prohibited Beats. Track 5 is a syncopated track in the style of Blacktip Reef Shark from Music for Sharks. Track 6 is a chill out track in the style of Analog Native from Pleasure Control. And finally, track 7 is a wild drum and bass track in the spirit of Habon from Prohibited Beats. And for this one, I did go back in and add a second layer in order to try and capture that feeling of drum and bass that is traditionally written with purely electronic instruments. So the next step for all this is Folmr is going to grow an album around these drum tracks. So I'm excited to hear what he does with them, and I guess that will be ready when it's ready. He's typically releasing dozens of albums in a year, so in a wide variety of genres himself. So when that's here, I'll share it with you. Meanwhile, I shot a bunch of improvised drum solos with the kits I made for this album. So check back in the coming days to hear those, and I'm also trying to do something special with them to hopefully make them educational as well as entertaining. So do check back in for that. So as ever, if you like this video, please give it a like. It really helps the algorithm. Also subscribe if you're not already, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.